Welcome to On the Issues with ABC News senior White House correspondent Martha Raddatz and the Brookings experts for a dialogue on policy issues and ideas. Foreign Policy Director Carlos Pascual says U.S. policy in Iraq should be shaped by lessons from Kosovo and Somalia.
We have heard over the last few months how much things are improving in Iraq, and yet you call it a failed state and snared in a civil war.
It's absolutely a failed state. What we've seen as a result of a surge of American military presence is it's helped create some conditions that have brought the violence down. And in particular, it's resulted in two things. The Sunni militias have decided that they're tired of being attacked by al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they want to work with the U.S. military. The Jaish al-Mahdi, the Shia militias, have also called a ceasefire, and ironically, that's been facilitated by the presence of U.S. troops. But what has not happened is that either the Sunni or the Shia have committed themselves to an Iraqi state. And the question that still remains is, can there be a viable Iraqi state here? There has not been progress on that, and that is where I think we need to focus a political and diplomatic surge if we want any kind of sustainable outcome in Iraq.
And what would that look like, a political and diplomatic surge?
It would be a challenge because it is also an extraordinarily complicated situation. But what it essentially would need is an individual that would have the trust of the international community, probably working under a United Nations mandate, not UN business as usual, but a major international figure that has the trust of the international community, working across all the Sunni and Shia groups, trying to understand what their positions are on issues such as federal-regional relations, oil revenues, militias, de-Baathification, or the reversal of that process, questions of political inclusion and minority rights, to understand if it is possible to actually broker a deal among these groups. Once you have that understanding, then you have to begin to make a judgment call of whether to bring all of those parties and the neighboring states together to try to broker a solution in Iraq that could actually result in a truce for a period of about 5 years. The reason I raise this in this format is that what we've learned over time is that all of these issues are interrelated. And if you can't find an understanding that cuts across these issues, it's very difficult to get those parties to buy into a political outcome. If our current strategy continues, what we're essentially saying is that we're going to go issue by issue and hope that there is a legislated outcome that works on a rational actor basis in U.S. or Western terms. It doesn't take into reality the trade-off across questions that these groups are going to have to face.
And this obviously is what your advice would be for the next president, to get this single person to bring this all together.
It's a single individual that's working with a team that has the credibility and legitimacy of the United Nations, but has to work in conjunction with the United States. It doesn't mean that the U.S. can opt out of the process. We have the huge military presence in Iraq, obviously, and there has to be a coordination between the U.S. military and any kind of political and diplomatic process. If we look at what happened in Afghanistan, for example, there we had Lakhdar Brahimi operating for the UN, but in conjunction and in coordination with U.S. actors. And it was that kind of combination, a UN actor, U.S. actors, other key parties brought in together to negotiate a strategic plan that resulted into the Bonn Agreement. We have no such centralized process in Iraq. Frankly, it may not work. It is a steep uphill climb because there is so much at stake and there's so much distrust. But given everything that we have invested in Iraq and the distrust that exists among the parties, the stakes that exist and the implications for the U.S. military, why not try it?
And what are the implications for the U.S. military right now? If your plan went into effect, would you have to continue the military part of this surge, do you believe?
By the end of President Bush's term, the likelihood is that there's still going to be 130,000 to 150,000 troops in Iraq, somewhere in that range. When the next president comes in, they will be facing what is the maximum number of troops that we will see in Iraq in the future. And so do you use that presence that is still going to be there, because it would take time to withdraw troops, as a way to create leverage that allows you to run a political and diplomatic process and achieve success, yet also send a clear message that if there isn't a willing to engage in a political process, that those troops would be withdrawn. And that's how I think the troop levels can actually be used strategically to reinforce a political and diplomatic process.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.